everyone. Welcome to the Crown Report. My name is Brittany. So much going on this week. Our major story that we're going to be leading with, of course, is sort of Norway on the brink of collapse in terms of its monarchy, because the scandal with Marius Borg Høiby, who is the son of the crown princess, so the crown prince of Norway is his stepson, is just getting bigger. This thing is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, crazier, and the crown prince and princess are being dragged into it more and more. So this is definitely really a story to discuss for sure, what it means for them in the future, because they are basically being implicated, at least some of these reports, of basically criminal interaction with some of Marius's friends, who a lot of them are criminals. So it's a huge story. It just continues to get bigger. So we will go over this. It started last month. It continues into this month. So we've got a lot more to share about it. And again, one of the news that's coming out is how much the crown princely couple knew. And as it turns out, maybe quite a bit, including there's a situation with items being stolen from the crown home, a credit card that actually goes to the royal office of being used inaccurately, and Hell's Angels play into this as well. So yeah, lots of stuff here. We also have a lot of royals in New York for the UN summit meetings. There's various meetings that happen throughout New York City regarding the UN, and a lot of royals are there. And we know for sure that Queen Maxima, Queen Matilda, Queen Rania, probably maybe King Abdullah of Jordan, but I think he's still actually in Jordan because of everything going on with Israel and Lebanon. And then we do also have Prince Harry. He is there as well. Princess Astrid of the Netherlands is there too. She is the son of, I think his name is Prince... Oh, now I'm suddenly blanking on his name. But he was one of the former queen's sons who passed away tragically in an avalanche accident several years ago now. And then we also have just a lot of different things. BBC and an anti-monarchy group is reporting on the costs of the monarchy, and I think they're being a little hinky with their conclusion. So we will go over all this today, but we should really start off with the Marius story, because that is the one where I was trying to get more information about it. I was like, it just kept going and going and going. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So this is actually a Norwegian website. It is actually translated into English. And as a reminder, because if you guys join me on my Saturday morning live streams, these ones, I just kind of go through and share some of the stories that are going on. And then we add sort of more details as times are appropriate. And I might just go ahead and switch out the picture here real quick so we can share with you what we're looking at, because this is really about the Crown Prince family of Norway. So just to give you an idea of who's who, we have Crown Prince Haakon right here. His daughter Ingrid Alexandra, Princess Ingrid Alexandra, she will be the future queen of Norway. This is a Prince of Magnus, who is their younger son. And then we have a Crown Princess Mette-Marit, and this is her son. You can definitely see the family resemblance there between the two of them from a previous relationship before she met the crown prince. So he is not royalty, but royal adjacent. And there are obviously stories, I think, that had been hanging around the media, but the story really blew up because in August, he was arrested for domestic violence, basically against his girlfriend, property damage, and threats were kind of the three things that he was charged with. Those charges continue to expound, including threats to a guy, death threats to a guy who has actually fled Norway. I believe one of the girlfriends in this situation recently had also been threatened by someone, and that person had been arrested and she has fled the country. So this case keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's go over the latest, because it's a new article, and what is being discussed here is very, very serious when it comes to his parents, because he was essentially raised in their home. And so although he spent time with his biological father, he spent most of his time with his family here. And so what he was doing, the criminal elements he was associating with, and how much the police and everybody knew about this, of course, is coming into question now in a really, really serious way. And so one thing I just wanted to point out here real quick before we kind of go into the meat of the story is just when it comes to the property damage to his alleged girlfriend. So this is Marius's alleged girlfriend, because she kind of said they weren't dating, even though he said he loved her. So the damage that is being asked for by the property owner of the home he damaged was a broken chandelier, damage to walls and surfaces. So those are kind of the main property damage that he contributed to this home. But again, the big question is, how much did his parents know? So C. Og Hor is reporting several things, including that people with criminal records have been in the Sanguum residence where the Crown Princely couple live. So his parents' home, which is an estate, there's actually multiple properties within it. There were criminals going into there, and they essentially knew about it. And so not only were they in the home where the Crown Princely couple lived, they were also obviously in Marius's home as well. But that they were in actually the Crown Princely home is just so completely crazy. And how do we know this? We know this because there's actually a video, and I will try to get it here going real quick. A video of someone on a Segway in the royal residence going around it, and this being shared. So this is just, again, really, really crazy. So we're kind of waiting for the commercial to go by. But that people were filming and doing various things within the home is obviously very, very concerning, because that's not what that residence is really meant for. It's meant for, obviously, the Crown Princely couple to live. It is a privately owned home, so it is just a smidge different than some other places. But let's go ahead and share it with you guys here. So this is from somebody's private, like, Instagram or something. So he's on a little Segway thing here, and he's singing and he's going around, which looks a little bit trashed, the royal residence. And so we've seen pictures of the family at this dining table before. You can see the kitchen here. And so this is obviously very serious. And there's this one little bit here, right here. This actually is like portraits of the crown princes, I think, sitting right there. So this guy is just hanging around, looks at him, can definitely tell. And then we've seen, I think, this kind of library area before. So pretty crazy that somebody was taking videos of this kind of thing. It's just very, very wild. And so, as it turns out, Marius's friends would gather there, and they would call them Sanguum festivals. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And so, because of these parties and gatherings, it's been now officially reported that high crown and affectionate value items from the Crown Princely couple were stolen from the residence. So Marius was inviting his friends over, and they were stealing things. And one of these things included silverware, which the thieves later tried to sell at auction, but the auction house did get a little bit concerned. And so obviously that sale stopped, and I believe the items went back to the Crown Princely couple. But literally, he's inviting his friends over multiple times, and they are stealing things. And the Crown Princely couple and the government knows this, that they're stealing things. Another interesting thing, and this was supposedly in the original report, but then I had to kind of look later to actually find what it was. But apparently, there's a petrol card that is issued to the royal court for the Crown Princely couple to use. So this petrol card is there for them to use gas to get to various places, probably for official events and those sorts of things. That card was stolen in 2020 and used by one of Marius's friends or whoever was invited to these kind of festival party things. And nobody really figured that out, at least for a little while. And so the government potentially paid for, you could argue almost, criminal elements to get gas. So that's definitely not what you want. So again, back here to keep an eye on the family. So that is really crazy. Marius was also known to drive recklessly on the property and actually crashed his car into a fence at one point. He was in the process of being investigated for reckless driving, but those charges were dropped. And overall, the police knew about this. Police and the people who were charged with protecting the residents knew that he was doing all this stuff. And so they were keeping an eye on all his friends and keeping them all under surveillance. And you could just got to wonder, just the crown wasting resources protecting a property that a guy was inviting known criminals to. I mean, that is insane. That is absolutely insane. And they were also aware not only of Marius's cocaine use, but that they were suspected that he was connected to large-scaling drug trafficking operations. So there were huge concerns. And in a conversation with police, which Marius recorded, we don't really know why, because like my concern is he was recording this conversation. I don't think the police actually knew it, and it ended up with this publication later. And I think he was maybe recording it, don't know. Again, this is just my speculation, that he was recording it to give to his criminal friends so that they knew that the cops were looking into them for things. Like, Absolutely insane. And he said on one of these recordings that his friends, some of them are criminals, and my parents know it, and also said I can't do anything about that. So they're like, well, your friends are criminals. What do you want to do? Nothing. He doesn't want to do anything. And apparently, at one point, members of the Hells Angels were at the Crown Princely residence, and Crown Princess Margrethe met them or was there around the same time and could have interacted with them. Members of Hells Angels. Yes, Hells Angels is in Norway. I looked it up and double checked. Yes, they are 100% in Norway. So, absolutely crazy. And so when he was arrested for the second time, because he was arrested on August 4th for assault and all those things regarding his girlfriend, and then he was arrested again on a hunting trip on September 14th for violating a restraining order that was taken out against him by her or her lawyers, representatives, those sorts of things. And so he was on this hunting trip. When they raided the place, there was a 38-year-old convicted criminal. His charges included drug possession and money laundering. And then the police, when they raided the cabin, found an illegal weapon and drug paraphernalia. So they didn't directly link it to him, but obviously, yeah, lots going on there. And then it's just become this incredibly big problem for Norway because even in her 18th birthday address in 2022, Princess Ingrid Alexandra, again, the future queen, said that she really looked up to her older half-brother, Marius. So this guy who we know is a criminal element, has criminal friends, invited his criminal friends into their home. He's a role model for the future queen. It's not playing well. And that one of the things that she really respected was that he was very loyal to his friends. Obviously, when it comes to criminal activities, loyalty kind of has a different context. And Anderson, who is the editor of C. Og Horse, said that Marius's loyalty can be admirable in of itself. But when it is linked to people and situations that stand in stark contrast to healthy values, it sends a wrong signal both to the public and to Ingrid herself. And again, she shared this before all of this came out. But they sort of knew something bad was going on. And she had to have been aware of some of it because apparently he has also been in and out of rehab. And so he calls on the entire Crown Princely family. Number one, that Marius has to be kicked off the estate because, and I agree, he can't keep inviting criminals there and them just letting him do it. And it says they need to proceed carefully and show loyalty to the responsibilities and mark clear boundaries between themselves and Marius because he needs help and they should help him. But at the same time, too, he is dragging them all down into his mess at this point. And at some point, I guess, in interviews, he alleged to the police that even if they found something on him regarding his criminal activity and drug use, he doesn't really have to worry about that because his parents, there's nothing to, the press isn't allowed to write about it or something to that effect. So, lots of things going on. It is a crazy story. Again, I got all this kind of translating various Norwegian sources because a lot of this is not being covered very well in English. But all this to say, this is just a wild situation. A guy directly connected, living on a Crown Princely property, is wildly engaged in criminal activity, it seems. His friends are criminals. He's charged now with criminal offenses. He might have gotten out of criminal offenses because of his parents. And what this sort of looks like, and I think the true danger here is that he's been so closely associated with them that everything he's getting marred into is dragging them down too. And they had to know. The question is, how much did his parents know? Did they cover for him multiple times? Has the government been putting, you could say, funds into protecting him in some ways? Have investigations not gone forwards because he's attached? All of this plays horribly, I think, for Norway, for the Norwegian monarchy especially. Because the big question I have, and I think the question everyone should have, is how much have his younger siblings been exposed to his criminal activity? Because you're talking about the future of the country. And I've talked about this in a different situation, which is that when it comes to the scandals that have involved Spain and Belgium, which required the former kings to abdicate, the new kings were not really involved in the scandal. So they could sort of walk in and fill the vacuum and things didn't go too off the rails. The problem is you have almost the entire future generations all marred in this. They're all potentially implicated in basically cavorting around with criminals. I mean, again, all allegedly and all this stuff, this is still under investigation. But even if the king abdicated, and I wondered if he would at some point, because King Harold is not doing well. He tends to be very poorly. Usually, like, I feel like for a while, every couple of months, he was in the hospital. I feel like he's been out of the hospital for a little bit, but he was in the hospital several times. So he's not somebody who is super healthy. And so I thought, oh, maybe he'd abdicate like Queen Margrethe. Now that becomes really problematic because his son is now, you wonder, he was the major male figure, you could say, in Marius's life in many ways, because Marius was mostly raised in his house, and Marius is now involved in all these things. And then again, he is doing these things sometimes at the royal residences with maybe his younger siblings involved in those situations. How much have they been exposed to? Are they now engaged in some of that activity? I don't really see much of that from Ingrid, but what about her younger brother Magnus? Like, what is going on there? Again, super, super concerning for where things are going to go. The royal family has already seen their popularity plunge, I think by like 20 points the last time I looked. It'll be interesting to see how this story continues to grow, how far it'll plunge, because there are some outlets in Norway that are not covering this very well. See Og Horror, which sounds really weird. It's like, I think See and Hear or something like that is more, you could say, of a celebrity trashy publication, but they're getting, I think, the story. They're sort of digging and trying to find things. And this is very obviously serious for the Norwegians. I don't think they can sort of wiggle their way out of this very easily. And so they have to make some pretty stark decisions here about where things go from here. Where do things go from here? Because in order to secure the crown, because Harold is sickly, he's in his 80s now, and obviously the transition of power can come very soon. And so if they're not prepared, then it might be really easy for a Republican movement to come up through the ranks. And it also has interesting implications for other royals. Obviously, many people compare Marius to Prince Harry. I don't think that's a very apt comparison, because he has never been royal. He was never going to be a working royal. And he lived, I think, and I did a video on this, he kind of lives in two worlds, because he was royal at his mom's house. He doesn't have any of those titles. So he's connected to the royals, but he's not really connected. And so I think he lives in kind of this weird thing where he's there and he's not there. And his father has remarried and had other children. His mother remarried and had children. So he never really had a family that was his own in some ways. He's attached to two other families. So I think there can obviously be psychological scars that develop from something like that, but it doesn't excuse this behavior. And I think obviously it has been indulged for a long, long time. So very, very serious here. And I really hope they address it. And obviously, again, other royal families need to take note, because we don't really have anything as serious, I don't think, in other royal families as of yet. I think Crown Princess Mette is coming out of this looking especially bad, because obviously Marius is her son, and she's obviously been connected at some point with Jeffrey Epstein. And we also have, obviously, Prince Andrew connected to Jeffrey Epstein, but it's sort of different, I would say, because Andrew started his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein when he was fully an adult. Marius is 27, I believe. So he's still rather young. So you do still have this legacy of him being connected to his parents. And so you can't ignore it quite that much, because this obviously had to start somewhere. And I have a lot of doubts that this started just when he was like 21 or something. I'm most likely this started happening when he was in his teens, before he even left high school. So they had to be fully aware of what was going on here. So I like how Ashley said, this is why I'm grateful we don't have a royal family. It is sort of nice that we don't have to worry about some of these type of things. Because again, if this was a celebrity situation, I feel like the reaction would be totally different. But given that these are the future heads of state of Norway, and even though he's kind of off to the side and trying not to be too close to the whole thing, he could be a convicted criminal who spends time in prison. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily everything, because the brother-in-law of the current king of Spain has actually spent time in prison. So I'm getting all my countries and words mixed up, but it's something where I'm just like, is just shocked that it keeps kind of getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more people are being pulled into it. And he doesn't seem to really care. He went to a wedding in Italy, and he didn't attend the wedding, I guess, but he spent time in Italy away from the press. And then he went up to this cabin with a known criminal. So you get the sense at this point that he's really not dealing with the severity of the charges against him. And this is obviously something that has been building and building soon. So again, very interesting story here, very sad. And again, lessons that all royal families should take. Obviously, we have problems with Prince Harry, Prince Andrew. And yes, I know there are other quote unquote spares now, but these spares are they're still spares in how they were raised to a certain extent. Yes, they have been supplanted now, but they were kind of raised as the spares. And so they kind of continue to keep that moniker. We do also have Prince Laurent in Belgium, who apparently is going to apply for Italian citizenship because he's really miffed that he's kind of getting more unimportant by the day, which again is what happens in royal spheres. Because again, this doesn't really apply to Marius because he was never in the line of succession at all to begin with. But overall, what royal spares seem to struggle with is that they start off being very important. Like Harry, he was, let's see, his father was first, brother second. He was third in line to the throne for most of his life. And so he was raised and he had all the security apparatus and everything, raised feeling very important. And then at some point, obviously George is born, then Charlotte, then Louis. And his relevance diminishes over time. And so all of a sudden you have this thing where he's just not that important. And they seem to have, some of them at least, seem to have a hard time dealing with that. So that is the latest on that situation in Norway. Again, I wanted to spend some time on it because I kept going and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I kept reading more and more things. And I knew I had heard about the credit card story. And that just to me is crazy that somebody from one of these parties stole a credit card that was a government credit card and started using it and nobody really noticed. So again, raising huge numbers of questions. So next we have, obviously, the Earthshot Prize of finalists have been officially announced. And so Prince William did this via video earlier today because this is sort of the UN week. And it explains why when I was looking for hotels in New York City, they were astronomically expensive at this time because everybody's coming to New York for UN stuff. But this includes Earthshot Prize as well. Prince William did not come this year. And he has, though, made the official announcement. So let's go ahead and take a listen to a little bit of this here.
I'm delighted to introduce you to this year's 15 new Earthshot Prize finalists. These solutions are some of the most exciting, innovative, and impactful we've seen. And the people behind them are true inspirations.
So again, I love the beard's still there, kind of sort of love that, but let's keep going.
I know you're as passionate as I am about making a difference to our planet, and we can't wait to share their stories with you. The 2024 Earthshot Prize finalists are...
So we won't listen to the whole thing just because of both copyright issues and it's a little long, but I will say that I sort of love the idea of the Earthshot movement because it's not just about, I feel like, blaming people for whatever carbon emissions they put out there in the world. It's not about blaming people because I feel like some of Harry's stuff and other people's stuff is more about like blaming, oh, you're using too many carbon emissions. Why are you traveling? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? But this is more about finding solutions while continuing with normal life, because you see some people who want to make these very radical changes and not continue with kind of normal life. They just want to radically change everything immediately. And it causes these kind of ripple effects I think people aren't aware of. And so I do like this. And there's kind of, let me see if I can pull up, there's kind of little subcategories. So there's 3 in each subcategory. So we have build a waste-free world. And so you can see some of the opportunities, and then clean our air. Let's see. Clean our air is the next one. If you're curious. Revive our oceans. Protect and restore nature. And finally, let's see if we can get, I missed it back there. And fix our climate. So those are some of the little subcategories that they have here. And so there's should be, if there's 15 and there's 5 subcategories, and there's obviously 15 finalists. So this will be announced. The winners will be announced in Cape Town, South Africa. And I don't know if we got official dates yet. Here, so hopefully we will get some originals soon. And you can see all like where the finalists, where their kind of locations are. And they've had so many people apply for this. It's actually really quite incredible. So they've had 5,300 nominations representing 141 countries. That's insane. That's just less. I think that's just 40 countries less than the total countries on Earth, which I think is about 190 or something. So maybe about 45 or so. Not quite sure, 190 something, I think. So very exciting. So 60 finalists, 15 winners. Oh, 60 finalists, 15 winners. Oh, overall. So that's overall the history of the prize. Because I was like trying to make sure, because I almost got a little confused. I'm like, wait, are these finalists or are these the winners? So the one winner is Earth. So very exciting to see 15 winners, 60 finalists. So very exciting about this. So glad to see Prince William is still representing, even though he can't be in there in person, because it is just a really, really exciting opportunity. And I think people are really just engaging with it a lot. And so I'm excited to see what the Cape Town event looks like, because it'll be very different. Like last year, obviously, Catherine couldn't go to Singapore. I almost did the Singapore event, but with just William being there, it's a lot of money to fly to that area of the world. So I'm like, well, that's a lot of money if it's only William. Like if it was both of them, maybe the kids, it would be well worth it. But it just seemed to be very, very, it was very expensive. So I was like, best to wait. And hopefully maybe Catherine comes, although I don't think so. I think most likely if we see her at another Earthshot event, it'll be in 2025. I doubt we'll see her in 2024. An interesting thought, because I know they talked about Prince George having some tests, and that's why Catherine couldn't go in 2023. But I do wonder, since now we know the extent of Catherine's health issues, and it has been reported before as well that she had been struggling for quite a while. I believe that is from Dan Wooten's reporting, that it seems like it could have been that she was undergoing some tests maybe or something during that time as well, while Prince William was doing the Earthshot prize, because again, that gives them kind of a good, I don't want to say out, but kind of a way to sort of say it was George, while deflecting from the fact that Catherine couldn't go because maybe she was still having some health issues there. So that's just something to consider as well. And when it comes to the royals this week, obviously so much of it is going to be based at the UN. There are so many royals at the UN this week. You know, Queen Matilda is there, Queen Rania, Queen Maxima. Queen Maxima is there. She is a UN inclusive, like Secretary General, UN Special Advocate for Inclusive Finance and something else. So she does quite a few things with the UN there. And so she is there, but we haven't seen her much in some official meetings. I've been trying to follow the Dutch Twitter account, and I haven't seen it too much. There's also one that's just for Maxima in her role in the UN, which I think is kind of cool. I haven't seen too much there as well. Queen Matilda of the Belgians is there, and she is attending some of these events, and at least one of them is related to Summit of the Future at NYC, which is dedicated to breathing new life into international cooperation, and thus also into the implementation of sustainable goals of the UN. And so she also participated in a dinner put on by the WHO, talking about the impact of violence against children. And Prince Harry was there as well. And so that was just sort of interesting. I just always got to wonder what some of these royals think if they meet Harry not within a particular UK or a royal situation, like how exactly do they like manage it? Because they obviously need to be friendly. They don't want to kick him out or something like that. But it's weird because he's more in this celebrity sphere and not really a royal sphere. So it's sort of different. He's doing a lot of different things, which I'm not tracking too much because part of me is like, do I really want to track it that much? I don't know. But the big thing we will talk about in a video later today, which I'm excited to get about, is talking about his staff members wearing a pin on their lapel of their monogram, Harry and Meghan's monogram. That irks me a lot, and it'll probably be more of a rant video, but we will do that later today. So not doing that quite yet, but definitely something in the future, because that has to be discussed. What they're attempting to do, again, kind of being royals of the US, is not really, it's not going to work, Harry and Meghan. So let's go ahead, though, and talk about this interesting article from the BBC, because obviously the anti-monarchist crowd, they want the royals out. And this is why, again, I think the Norwegian story is so important, because you think, oh, nobody will want you out. We do all this great stuff for the people. They'll just love us to infinity. And the reality is, when you sort of give them, let's say, a leg in, or they see a weakness, they want to pounce. They want to pounce. And so the anti-monarchy crowd in the UK, I think, is somewhat growing steadily. And I can't help but say that probably Prince William and Meghan do play a role there. Just like Marius is playing a role with the Norwegian monarchy, it also has to do with Martha Louise in Norway as well, her marrying the American shaman guy. And you could argue the royal family looking a bit too comfortable embracing him into the family, because he is a pretty controversial figure. And so you got to wonder, was it really the best idea to like fully embrace him, or should they somewhat kept their distance? They can't totally, because people would cry racism, but if they didn't, then they're kind of embracing him too. And if she and he do something crazy and the whole royal family was there at the wedding, again, they look complicit. That's, again, the tricky thing. So that's why you have to be so careful, because people are looking for that moment to pounce. And so the anti-monarchy crowd says the royals really cost the UK 510 million. Now, this is interesting. I haven't gone to actually how they put it, but one of the things I know that's going on in the UK, because again, politics does play into this, is that apparently the winter fuel allowance is being stripped this year, and the Republic's chief executive, Graham Smith, is going, well, we spend $510 million per year, and we could put that towards helping other people heat their homes and everything, which heating is very important. And so that is, of course, something, again, people want to undermine what the monarchy does. And so there's reportedly $86 million that the state funds to the sovereign grant. So what does this include? This includes things like security, state dinners, official state visits, travel for the royals if they're going on some sort of official engagement, business, those sorts of things, and some other expenses related to staffing. So that's really what the sovereign grant is about. And some of that too is pulled in for specifically home maintenance. So what does that mean? Like Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace, a home that large, is an enormous thing to maintain. It's massive to maintain. It's super, super expensive to maintain a building that large. And so with the royals having a residence like that, they need to be able to secure it. And because it's something where buildings like that, just after time, they're just so costly to maintain. This is what's happening across the board in Europe and in the UK, where people have these stately homes and they've been connected to the family for generations, but they just can't get enough money to keep them updated, or they're just barely getting by. So they might have this massive, massive home that people would go, oh, I would love to have a home like that. And those people are barely scraping by, not because they don't have enough money, but because they can't get enough money to maintain a home that large. And so Buckingham Palace and something like that is, I think, where probably most of this money, if that's really what they're costing, is going through. Because even in this thing, it's not really clear where it says it's going to. But again, the Republic argues that only a fraction, and this will get people riled up. And so they say this $510 million includes lost income to taxpayers, and then includes the duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, which fund the royal family, basically more of their personal expenses. So the Duchy of Lancaster belongs to whoever the monarch is, and the Prince of Wales, in this case William, his initial title once the Queen died immediately became the Duke of Cornwall. And so he controls Cornwall, which is a much more it's a much more wealthy property portfolio rather than Lancaster, which is somewhat interesting. And Charles is using that money not only to fund himself and Camilla, but some of that is being given to the Edinburghs. It's given to Anne, some of it to Andrew, not very much, just a smidge, just a smidge. And so it says a further $96 million could be raised in revenue from royal residents if they were used for commercial purposes. And I understand somewhat what they're coming from, because if you open the palaces more to tourism, then they'll generate more income. They just will. But they also have to be working residences. It would be like opening up 10 Downing Street to tours all the time or something like that, because the royals are still heads of state. And the problem as well is that if you make the palace too commercial, then it sort of loses its status in a way. And one of the things I thought, because I did have tickets to go and see the East Room of Buckingham Palace, where the balcony is and everything. And one of the interesting things I thought of was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was somebody down there who could take your picture on the balcony, or take a picture as you're, maybe pretending to go out on the balcony so you could have that picture. And then I think to myself, I'm like, no, that's a horrible, terrible idea, Brittany, because then it loses some of the real magic that happens when those balcony doors open, if anybody can do it. So you have to reserve it and make it something that is just exclusive to a certain number of people. And so there's a danger there to making it too much. And then it also says that the anti-monarchy group believes that most of the government funding or whatever, some of this money is coming from security. I really doubt that. But there are a couple of different ways to look at this. Number one is that security of royal residences, there is a perimeter security and there's a security for individual people. Perimeter security would probably exist either way. Why? Because you have big historic buildings which have a historic connection to the country. So you are not going to leave these buildings to rot. It's actually good that people are living there, because that means they're being used, and they're less likely to collapse because they're not going to be abandoned at some point because, oh no, it's just going to take too much to maintain them. They can obviously divert some of the money they're making maybe from the duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall at certain points if they need to, but the government is going to have to maintain these buildings either way. They're just not really getting out of it. They're buildings of historic value to the country. So you have to secure them. So this includes obviously Buckingham Palace, you have Windsor Castle, Sandringham Estate, and Balmoral. Now, I don't know if there might be one or two more. You have Highgrove to consider as well, but any royals who live within the security perimeter of Windsor Castle would be covered by the general Windsor Castle security. And that would have to exist either way. Like, would you just leave Windsor Castle open to anybody traipsing around there? No, you would still have to secure it. So it doesn't make a ton of sense. And when it comes to Andrew in this instance, obviously there's been a big clash between Andrew and Charles over where Andrew will stay. And it has been officially reported that Charles is not going to renew the security contract to the company who currently secures Andrew's property, because Royal Lodge, although it is part of the Windsor estate, is not within really the same Windsor security perimeter. So he did have to hire extra security, but Charles is like, I'm really not going to we're not going to do that contract again. So, Andrew, you're kind of on your own. You either have to pay it yourself or you move to Frogmore Cottage, because he's been trying to get Andrew to move to Frogmore Cottage for quite a bit. Apparently, even Fergie, even though she has a house in London that she has purchased, she is just renting it out to gain the money from it, which I think is kind of tricky there, because it's like you're living in a home that, although Andrew has to pay to keep its upkeep and everything, which is on a crown estate, but you do have another home that the two of you could live in, because you guys still kind of live together, because she still lives in Royal Lodge, that she is making money from, which she can actually live in. So again, I think that's a little hinky. So that's something to consider as well. And again, I doubt the cost of individual security for various royal members really goes to the tune of like $200 million a year. Like at most, I don't even want to estimate. Maybe at the extent would be like $50 million a year or something. But you're talking about, again, securing estates you would have to secure anyways, and those sorts of things. So another interesting thing is that he wants the salary of the monarch to be just $189,000 a year, just like the prime minister. I'm like, sure, that'll be. And the head of state running costs should only be $5 to $10 million a year. But the thing is, what makes the British monarchy so interesting is its elaborate state events. You don't get, I've watched, guys, a lot of state events in different countries. I've watched a lot of them. And it it's so different with the Brits. It's so almost over the top, but like they're very used to it. There is no state event quite like what the British can put on. It's entirely different than anything else in the world, and it makes them unique. If it just goes to $5 to $10 million, like that's probably the cost of one state visit. If you don't have, and that includes nothing else throughout the rest of the year. That doesn't include, let's say, Trooping the Color. Trooping the Color is a massive event that gathers a lot of people. People fly in just for that event. It is a tourist thing that helps. And yes, I know some people have said and argued it as well that Versailles actually technically has more visitors, obviously, than Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace is only open three months out of the year. When I was there to do the tours, it was packed. It was packed with people. And so it was one of those things where there's just so much that there's only so much they can do, and they would have to use that building either way. And I think keeping it as a royal residence gives it a special magic because it is a very elaborate. When I went in there, guys, I was completely surprised by how elaborate some of the fixtures were and everything. I was really not expecting, because I've been in a lot of palaces. And really there is nothing like Buckingham Palace. Versailles is very cool, but it is obviously a big property, and it's very well known for its Hall of Mirrors. And obviously people take pictures there. Got really obnoxious because all the influencers want to be there and take pictures. And although I like wanted to take my pictures as well, I'm just like watching these other people going, this one girl was having like her baby sister or something do all these pictures for her, and she was posing a bunch, and it got me real annoyed. So I think if you made Buckingham Palace into that, it would just become, more of kind of a tasteless tourist trap rather than what it is, which is, although people want to go there, people gather there all the time, you don't want to turn it into kind of this horrid tourist trap either. So again, very interesting thing going on there with, questions over the costs and everything. And it's something where I think definitely the royal family has to, again, be careful. This is where, again, we see this message in Norway for sure. Be careful. You have to step carefully into this new era. You can't go too far, too fast, or anything like that. Like, you have to adjust, you have to modernize, but you can't go so far whereas you lose that real magic that you need to maintain. Once you lose the royal magic, it's just really, really hard to get it back. And obviously Harry and Meghan have let that go, and that is not really it hasn't really helped them all that much at the end of the day. But it's something that's very, very critical to the view of royalty. And so let's just kind of keep going over some random royal news bits as well here. And we do have just very, very sad news. And I just want to find a picture here of her real quick, because when I saw this, it was just like, oh, my heart goes out to her, because it must be very, very uncomfortable. And I'm sure it's not how she wants to spend her time right now, but it's also a reflection of the fact that it was probably good of her to abdicate her throne. And that is Queen Margrethe of Denmark, because she was hospitalized on Wednesday after a fall at Fredensborg Castle. And so this happened on September 18th. And so the palace then announced on Friday, right before the weekend, that Her Majesty had damaged a vertebrae in her neck and had broken her left wrist. So both of these injuries mean that she'll be wearing a neck brace and a cast on her wrist for the foreseeable future, and that she will take a couple of steps back, and we won't see her much, or just see her as her schedule allows. And so she abdicated in January this year, and she did it because she was having trouble, I believe, with her back. So when she initially fell, I thought the vertebrae damage had something to do with her back, but it was actually her neck. So she will be recovering, and she's wildly popular. People love Queen Margrethe. And when she abdicated, it was like an absolute shock. Really, nobody knew about it. Even her son, Crown Prince Frederick, at the time he was now King Frederick, didn't even know she was going to do it until like 3 days before. So she had kind of made that decision, and it had a combination to do with health reasons. And both her sisters at that point, I believe, if I remember correctly, were widows. So it's kind of sweet because the three of them can kind of hang out together as like the widow crowd. Her sister is Queen Anne-Marie of Greece and Princess Benedict. So I just thought that was sort of a sweet story here. And so we do also have another interesting case in regards to royal scandals. And this is King Juan Carlos of Spain. So he is a very interesting figure. So I don't talk about, well, I talk about Spain as I can, but he is a very interesting guy because he is well loved in Spain in a certain way. Because when Francisco Franco died, who was the dictator of Spain for many decades, when he died, actually Juan Carlos was his heir. And Juan Carlos was supposed to be the future king of Spain. Now, actually, Francisco Franco bypassed Juan Carlos's father to give him the role of king, but Juan Carlos was essentially supposed to reign as a dictator, continue the reign of Francisco Franco. But Juan Carlos decided to make Spain a republic again. So democracy returned to Spain, which is a great thing. So he was much beloved for that. But he has been mired in a series of scandals in the last several years. And once again, this is coming up, related to a foundation that he is going to set up for his daughters, Elena and Christina. And allegedly, he says this is so that they could, initially I heard gain income. Some also put it as an inheritance, because again, a lot of these sources are not in English, so you kind of have to base it on the translators and everything. And so it was something where he was setting up this foundation so that they could get money. But the question is, where did he get the money originally? Because many think he sort of got this money through ill-gotten gains. And there was a series of scandals, and apologize because I don't remember exactly how they went, but essentially I think he got upwards of like $1 billion from some sort of basically like underhanded deal, basically, that he helped facilitate a company or a country associated with a company to come into Spain to build up some infrastructure, I believe it was. And he got like $1 billion, if not hundreds of millions out of the deal. And so this is something that they have been watching really, really closely. And apparently they're wondering again if this foundation, whatever it's going to be for his daughters, Infanta Elena and Christina, is once again just going to be a way to dodge taxes and launder money. And that they needed that. Number one, my first question is, when I heard the story, is like, they're in their 50s now, if not maybe one close to 60. I don't really think they need daddy to pay for things anymore. At least I don't think they need daddy to pay for things anymore. And so he doesn't really, and we already have Infanta Christina, her husband actually has spent time in prison for tax evasion and money laundering, I believe it was. So you have so much just very hinky monetary dealing here. And so he is under investigation for that, because they're wondering, number one, where did he get the money? Does this confirm after so many years that he has money from places he shouldn't have money from? That is what they're looking for. You also have, of course, the connection with Elena and Christina. People are wondering, like, they have 6-figure salaries from wherever they work. They're like, why do they need a bunch of money? Obviously, it's not going to his son, King Felipe. And it's probably good that it's not. But at the same time, too, it would help Spain, because Spain's monarchy overall is rather poor compared to some of the others. And so it might help, because it was a rather poor monarchy, and the king got money though, but he didn't get it the right way. So it's just going really, really sideways. And so it'll be interesting to see if this investigation leads anywhere. I think he just arrived back in Spain, or he was in Spain recently for the funeral of his nephew. And so we shall see again. And I have somebody who asked this question, and this is a great question. Ashley Kennedy asked, did he have a daughter out of wedlock? It actually wasn't Juan Carlos, although he had lots of affairs, including allegedly with Princess Diana. So Juan Carlos did have many affairs, but as far as we're aware, there is no reports that he fathered a child out of wedlock. Who you are thinking of is King Albert of Belgium. He did have a child out of wedlock. Her name is Delphine. And she's very wacky. And so she sued to get a title back. And so that was sort of the scandal that led to King Albert's abdication. And so that is the difference there between the two, because Juan Carlos's abdication had more to do with financial improprieties and his many, many affairs, including being on a safari with his mistress during Spain's, like when they were undergoing a lot of austerity measures because of I can't remember now what it was called. It wasn't the Depression, but it was that time period in about 2008 where everything kind of went flat. He was seen sort of, while everybody in Spain had to tighten the purse strings, he was going on safaris with his mistress. And obviously that doesn't play well. It doesn't tend to play very well. So I look forward to keeping an eye on that story and seeing where that goes. Obviously, we'll have to be looking at a lot of foreign sources to get sort of more about that. But I did want to share with you guys something real quick, which I didn't get a chance to focus on very much. And this is sort of a cute story. So this is about the wedding of Princess Astrid to her husband, who is part of the Habsburg family. And so this whole, I believe, interview is mostly in Dutch or French. And so
22 september 1984. Het heeft niet veel gescheeld of haar vader.
So this is to commemorate their 40 years of marriage. They have 5 children. And so I just thought it was really cool that they have this, like, this guy was able to do this whole like interview series with them. And is really exciting. So they say in this one bit, which is nice that he translated it for us. It says, "It was terrible, my uncle, King Baudouin." And what's interesting about Belgium too is Baudouin and his wife did not have any children. They were unable to. And so, but he didn't divorce his wife. He loved her so much. They stayed married. And so the throne actually passed to his brother, Albert, and it's his nephew now, King Philippe, who's on the throne. And so he says, and a few days before my father, King Albert, had fallen off his motorcycle. He had several fractures. He was in a lot of pain, a few obstacles to the wedding. And let me see if I can remember. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Oh, Prince Lorenz. So that is her husband's name. And so they were able to just kind of share their story and their family pictures and everything, which I think is pretty cool. It's fun to be able to follow some of these foreign royal correspondents and hear more about all these things going on in different aspects of the royal families, and reminding and remembering these kind of events in terms of their weddings and anniversaries and stuff, and how you go through the family, because family weddings are kind of fun and interesting. So lots to do. Let me go ahead and look at my list here to see if anything else pops up that would be worthwhile to share. So we do have Princess Alexia. She started her studies at the University College of London. And so we also have Princess Elizabeth of the Belgians. I don't believe I shared this last week. She's the Duchess of Brabant, has started her graduate studies in public policy at Harvard University. So we do have some upcoming royal events. These will be fun. So Queen Mary of Denmark will be visiting Brazil from October 2nd through the 5th. So she will be with the Minister for Climate, Energy, and Utilities. And so it's to grow, the purpose of the visit is to grow Danish and Brazilian cooperation. And she will be in Manaus and Brasilia. And so King Frederick and Queen Mary will also be undertaking a state visit to their neighbor Germany. So from October 21st to the 22nd. And it has followed their state visits to Sweden and Norway in May earlier this year. And they'll travel to Berlin in a Danish minority area, Schleswig-Holstein. And then as part of that visit, it's in order to also commemorate the Nordic Embassy complex in Berlin. So this will include as well, coming to visit for this event will be the Crown Prince and Princess of Sweden, Crown Princess of Sweden and her husband, Prince Daniel, and the Crown Prince and Princess of Norway. And so that'll be on October 21st. So it's to celebrate that 25th anniversary. And then we also have King Charles and Queen Camilla, who will be in Australia and Samoa from October 18th through the 26th. So I think that is all the major royal news story of the day. So guys, we do have a little bit of time, and I always like to ask and see if anybody has any questions. And I did want to share this one. Jennifer says, Brittany, it's one of my angels now as a cancer warrior who is still taking follow-up meds and in a lot of pain and depression. I found her accidentally maybe a year ago, and I just love her. Why, thank you, Jennifer. That is so sweet of you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm glad I could put maybe a little bit of smile on your face or anyone's face from time to time. And this is so fun, guys, because honestly, this was my hobby. I'm sure many of my friends and families got annoyed with me talking about from time to time. So what's so fun is I get to share it with all you guys here, and hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. So Gina as well says, hi, Brittany. So happy and surprised to see you live stream today. Great job. Very interested in this story. Yeah, I hope you guys are, because I'm really interested in following it. And I just can't wait to just not really wait to see where it goes, because that sounds like, oh, so excited. But it'll be interesting to see again how Norway processes this, and if it means, if it results in some sort of damage to the monarchy. I think it'll be, if things change, will be very interesting. I don't know. And it would be like sort of one of the first opportunities. I mean, if it got abolished, that would be rather fascinating. Norway is actually a fairly new monarchy, because it was part of Sweden for a while. And so to have a Norwegian royal family is actually a fairly new phenomenon. And so it could be something where they decide to change it. So I'm not sure. And so it was says, maybe just abolish Norwegian monarchy. They don't seem very royal, and they just try to be normal people, except extremely rich. There's no point. I mean, they do serve a point. I think King Harald has been a great asset to Norway. So has his sister, Princess Astrid, and you got Queen Sonja. But sort of the next generation, again, how you raise your kids really does matter, especially if you are royalty. So this is a story that'll keep evolving, and we shall see. Yeah, Hillary, who says the British royal family would personally have more money if there wasn't a working monarchy. I think the anti-monarchists are about 25% or so from the numbers I've seen. Yes, and I think sometimes they don't really appreciate how much work the monarchy does to its global image abroad, and how I think critical it is to have a monarch as head of state. I think it's actually really helpful, because a head of state is basically the face of the monarchy to the world. And Charles being the head of state, I think, is something where it can be something that's steady over time. And so when you think of the UK, especially when you had the whole upheaval, you had Boris Johnson, then Liz Truss, then Rishi Sunak, and you had all of them within what, a 6-month period. That's a lot of upheaval. The advantage of the monarchy, and Queen Elizabeth II obviously did die during that time as well. But the advantage of having a head of state of the monarchy is that your prime minister can change over and over and over again. But the face of your country does not, and that the face is Charles. And I think there is a continuity there that I really appreciate. Trina says, one of our members, as a retired spine nurse, Queen Margrethe's injury is probably a fracture. Standard non-surgical method is a neck collar. In 3 months, I hope it is healing well. It's tough surgery for a woman her age. Yes. I don't think she's 80 quite yet, but I believe, if I remember correctly, she's in her late 70s. Is she 80? Does she have, I can't remember if, I think she's not 80 yet, because she had her 70th birthday celebrations a couple of years ago. But I don't think she's 80 yet. I could be totally wrong though. But anyways, guys, do you have any other questions? So Angela says, very intrigued to hear your thoughts about Harry lecturing others about mental health in NYC. So I'm not trying to talk too much about Harry and Meghan here, but sometimes they apply, just in the case of Norway, they sort of apply because of, although I don't think there's a direct correlation or connection. I think the situation with Marius does have some bearing for the Brits. But when it comes to Harry talking about mental health, like the one thing I wanted to say on Twitter, which I think is still true, it's like, I don't really want to hear about how to improve your mental health from a guy who has no functional relationship with his family for no discernible reason. He doesn't strike me as a really mentally healthy guy, to be honest, and who seems to need to call his wife before he goes on stage to talk to her. I just doesn't seem real healthy to me. That's just my thought. Metal Mayhem says, Brittany, our monarch is the people's last line of defense. That's really interesting. It's a really interesting thought. I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, it's kind of cool. Astrid says, I just got to say, she's a member, that as a Norwegian, I couldn't care less about Marius. He's got nothing to do with the Norwegian monarchy other than being the crown prince's son from a former relationship. I would agree with that to a certain extent, though, but I think because he was within the royal household growing up, again, that offers, like, if he was with his father the whole time and everything, he still had a relationship with his mom or something, but if he was out of the house the whole time, then I don't think it would matter quite as much. But that he was in that house a lot, raises some interesting questions, but I'm glad that some are just kind of ignoring it and letting it go on. I think that is good. Ashley says, I still can't believe it's almost my birth month of October. Yes, so much October. Hillary says, I think the Crown Estate generates $1 billion annually, and is that actually owned by the people of the UK? Yes. So did forget to add that they do make money, and a lot of that goes back to the upkeep of the estates and those sorts of things. And so it's, again, the anti-monarchy crowd is just trying to whittle away at cracks that have been made. And cracks happen when there is a transition of power. It just kind of tends to happen. The people who are saying, well, I don't like this particular person, or I don't really like, in this case, the monarchy, when the transition of powers occurs between Elizabeth and Charles, and Charles is not as liked as Elizabeth is, then it's like they see their opportunity. So very interesting. Ms. Poverty says, I'm all about the sparkle. When will you do more jewelry videos? I'm hoping to get one out tomorrow. I don't think I'll get one out today, but my hope is to it'll be technically TR Wednesday instead of TR Tuesday. But I would like to my goal is to do kind of a look through at all of some of the sapphire tiaras and ranking them, because that has been something that is of interest as well. Daisy May says, thank you for saying the elephant in the room. No functional relationship with family is very unhealthy. We know why. Look at those wives. Yeah, if you don't have a functional relationship with your family, and there's not really a good reason, and he's lost all his friendships and stuff too, there's just nothing healthy about that dynamic, in my personal opinion. It would be one thing, again, if there was an actual reason, but there just doesn't seem to be any reason. So... So Nell Ackroyd says, all European royal spares should be obligated to attend a how-to boot camp devised and led by Princess Anne. If a spares fails the test, then they are normalized and rehabilitated into normal society. I like that. I think they should do that. They should totally do that. So we have Metal Mayhem says, evening from Manchester. So Angela says, apparently Harry had to make it clear to his eyes that a photo of his kids was on his lock screen. We get it, Harry. You're a father. Yes. And I will say again, not to get too into the Harry and Meghan stuff, what I don't like is that I feel like the Parents Network by Harry and Meghan, which is their kind of group that's to help parents who have lost their children due to harms from the internet, you could say, is that it just seems to be, and Harry and Meghan even say this in their CBS interview, that basically that they just give their kids devices and don't monitor them at all. They just give them they're like, here's a phone. And then it's the social media companies' problems that their kids develop issues. And I'm like, I don't think that's a social media issue. That is a parenting issue. I will say this, and I know maybe not everyone agree, but you have a lot of, those of you who are parents, you have a lot of power as parents, and you can't control everything, but I think people can definitely avoid giving their children technology too early. I think that is a good thing, and don't like Harry and Meghan's perspective, which tends to be that, well, Meghan even said this to a certain extent, I believe, when talking about the internet. She's like, well, your child could be on a device in your home and they could be looking at these terrible things and make a terrible choice. And like, but why is your child? And Harry said something similar too. And my question is, well, why is your child on a device in your home without your explicit supervision? I would think that's like kind of Captain Obvious. So Gaia says, I understand the privileged position and everything, but no one saw what Marius was struggling with and or having personal issues. He's going outside the royal circle while being literally into it. Yes. Although, again, what I will say through the whole article series, I think it was kind of known that most of the press kind of knew what he was up to, but weren't really reporting it. And the police definitely knew what he was up to. Like, they were fully aware of what was going on. Basically, the people he was inviting onto the Crown Estates, which would probably not be invited into particular sections of Norway, but somehow are getting onto the Crown Estate. Again, that's just crazy. So we do have Erin says, the reason Harry and Marius act childishly selfish is that they are not taught that noblesse oblige. Great privilege without great responsibility is a recipe for disaster. Yes. Although I feel like Harry had some of that at some point. But definitely Meghan, I think, inflated his ego. My thought is Meghan inflated his ego, and he believed that because of that, he was deserved and owed more than he got. And I think that's kind of a dangerous situation. We also have Hillary says Balmoral and Sandringham are privately owned. Yes, but given that they are owned by the king, I can't believe with any I can't not believe, you could say, that they would be covered. Like, the government does fund the security for those areas. Yes, I'm sure there's private security attached to, but when it comes to the perimeter and securing those locations, that would be a job for the state, because even though they're privately owned, you would need state level security for those, because they are hosting sometimes heads of state, or at least the head of state when it comes to Charles and the future heads of state. So very interesting. Ashley says it seems like most royals don't know how to actually parent. That is an interesting question. Yes. So we do have, and Marjorie says you can now tour at Balmoral. You can, I think tours already closed this year. So it's a very short window where you can do tours. So you can't do tours all year. I think Sandringham is open from time to time. I think there have been tours there. Although I always have a hard time when they don't allow you to take pictures in the residences. I like it when you can take pictures. I understand it does slow down the process, because obviously there's 1,000,001 people who need to take their selfies and stuff like that. But I prefer taking pictures because it helps me remember, because I kind of can look at the pictures again. Oh yeah, I remember going from here to here to here. That makes sense. Without the pictures, it makes that a little harder. It kind of all meshes together more. So Liz E says, I missed a live, but wanted to say hi, hello. And so any other questions you guys have here real quick? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap this up, because, I think I've got a rant coming, and I'll show you guys what it's going to be about. I'll give you a preview, because I'll probably do it not too long after we wrap up here. And so if you didn't see it, and also I broke the story, but somehow I did not get credit by the Mirror, and I'm almost a little annoyed by that. So we have here, this is the story. So guys, this is a staff member of Harry and Meghan's, and she's literally wearing their monogram as a pin on her lapel. Well, I guess it's not a lapel, her shirt. And I don't really feel like I've seen any royal force their staff members to do that. I think that's probably one of the dumbest things I've seen. And it doesn't make a ton of sense either, because people do that in diplomatic situations, and sometimes it's like their flag and the flag of whatever country they're visiting. Like, diplomats do that. Politicians have, an American flag they'll wear on their lapel. But I have never seen a monogram of a cosplay royals on their account. Yes. Thank you, Jennifer. I saw that first on Brittany's X account. Ridiculous. Yes. And yeah, I believe I was the first to break it, because I was just happening to look at pictures, and I was like looking, I was like, wait, what is that? What I think it is? Because you can definitely make out the crown on top and the monogram underneath. So we do have Disfan asked, did you see where Amazon released a series on the interview by Prince Andrew? I have seen that. I do need to watch it. So I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I would like to watch it. Maybe we'll do something. So that'll be an interesting series to see. There's a part of me that's like, why do we need a series on this? But I understand people's too, their interest in this. It's an interesting topic for sure. And what this means for particularly Andrew and the implications. So it's really crazy to think he totally destroyed his time in the monarchy basically by doing that interview. Like, whatever role he had within the monarchy was dead as soon as that interview was done. And it goes to show too what good communications support means and how that plays. So, and I also wanted to tell you guys as well, and I'll be looking into it, that CBS released a new bit from Harry and Meghan's initial CBS interview that they did last month in August. They released some exclusive excerpts that they didn't release before. I just happened to be trying to look for some of Harry's speeches in New York, and it just was one of the things that came up. And I'm like, wait, don't think we've seen this before. So they do have a new little bit. They still seem very disconnected in that interview. And it just reminds me again that there just doesn't seem to be any any reflection on like what the Parrots Network is supposed to be. I don't even think they know what it is. It was really weird. So sorry, you guys. Sometimes I'm reading the comments at the same time and trying to keep an eye on things, and my train of thoughts gets distracted real quick. Ms. Apuvi says, shouldn't losing HRH honorific mean they can't use the crown on the cipher for public use? I would think so, but they seem to think they can do whatever they want. Kathleen, the Queen, says, I'm late, but I'm here for the beginning to the end. So hopefully you catch at the beginning of this. We go over all that is happening in Norway, which is wild stuff. Louisa says, the Norwegian royals are very important to their country during World War II. Crown Princess Martha was a close friend of Franklin Roosevelt. There is a nice TV series on that, Atlantic Crossing. That is very cool. I will have to check that out. Little Lady D says, what about Archwell breaking the law? It didn't really. It's really hard for a 501c3 to lose their charitable status. And given that Harry and Meghan's political leanings are to the left of center, and the government is currently to the left of center, nothing's really going to happen. That's the honest truth there. The Screaming Introvert, one of our members, says that someone who doesn't, for good reason, have much relationship with family, it is odd to have someone giving Harry and Meghan advice who seem to be married to an unhealthy person and trashes their own family. Yes. Yeah, it is odd that he doesn't have a relationship with his family and then is trying to portray himself as healthy. I just think that's a little off. Josie says, off topic, but did you see Queen Sonia of Norway attending the Dior show in Paris? I did. I meant to put that out on Twitter because I do always like to watch the Dior show. Well, maybe not watch the Dior show, but I do always watch what's going on with the Dior show because a royal adjacent, so Beatrice Borromeo, who is an Italian aristocrat, she usually attends because she is a brand ambassador for them. And I think it's a particularly good relationship because I think she actually does Dior very, very well. And so she was there, and I did see Queen Sonia too. So I was going to see if I can pull up a picture real quick. I could find Beatrice here for just a second. She's wearing this outfit that's, pretty, I don't want to say average because that's not what it is, but it's like, nothing that stands out, but it looks good. So, you got a classic black turtleneck with a blazer. Skirt says Miss Dior. And she's wearing some boots. And so very casual chic, I would say. And then I was going to see if we can find Queen Sonia. That must be after the show. But Queen Sonia was definitely there. And I think she was like with the CEO of Dior or something to that effect. But Fashion Week is always fun because there's can be different royals there. One of the things I'll look forward to as well is to see if Charlotte Katsaragi attends the Chanel show, which seems like she's still a brand ambassador for them. We talked about this last week because the artistic director, who is someone who she was good friends with, left Chanel suddenly. And so I wasn't sure if she would continue to be a brand ambassador for the company. And apparently she is still going to be. So that is going to be, it'll be fun to see if she's there or not. Princess Alexandra of Hanover might attend these. We have a couple other sort of more minor royals that have attended. I think I'm getting close to where Queen Sonia is. Probably just put in Dior. Probably should put Queen Sonia. It'll come up quicker. And you got to wonder, too, in this particular instance, she's with France's first lady. Again, with all the things going on in Norway, I know it doesn't affect her, you could say, directly. But again, I think it adds an interesting question of how seriously Norway is taking some of this situation again. So this is interesting. Mehit Table says, the Hells Angels aren't that bad. When I lived in Manhattan, was the safest block on the island. That might not be necessarily wrong, but it again, there are some criminal elements definitely within there, and a huge thing to have a royal so closely associated, like him inviting them to the property and meeting her. So it's potentially it's quite wild to see. So Queen Sonia, if you don't know, it's because I didn't identify her, is right here. She's in the middle there with the shawl. You have France's first lady there to the right, and I don't know who the woman on the left is there. So she is, the CEO of Dior. So cool that Sonia got to go. I think she's been there before to that event, although I don't feel like I've seen her wear too much Dior. Anyways, it's a very interesting. Crown Princess Mar does have some Dior. And again, it's fascinating because royal ladies tend to wear designers from their country, but some countries like Norway just don't have as much as you could say the UK or Paris. There's some places where they just have technically more designers. I said Paris, but I meant France. So, guys, anyways, we will go ahead and wrap this up for the day, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this latest edition of the Crown Report. And I did say this is Yola Palo says the situation in Norway is a warning about the pitfalls of modernizing the monarchy. Those royals seem good people, but naive. I actually think that's a really, really great comment. And I mean, Mette-Marit had some connections to drug activities before. So, and the husband of the father of Marius was convicted, and I think spent time in prison related to drug charges. So very similar, but yeah, there are pitfalls to modernizing the monarchy. You have to do it carefully. You have to do it well. You have to do it right. Otherwise, you might find that the monarchy is no more. So guys, again, we will keep a close eye on the situation in Norway. And Yellow Paul says, John Paul. My name means John Paul. All right. Gotcha. I will remember. So guys, again, thank you so much for checking out some of the latest stuff going on in Royal World. And as a reminder, if you guys have seen some of this, and you have, I'm sure, that I'm cutting out some of these sections and putting them on for the main channel, usually in the morning. So you guys will see those coming up. I'm going to do like the background of the lettering will be white and the lettering itself will be red. So hopefully you can kind of differentiate, but not everybody tunes in, and some people might just want to know more about some of these stories. So we will pull them in and highlight some of the other royal families. So guys, again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed it. I do appreciate it, and I shall see you soon. Bye.